Captain Ethan Drake adjusted the straps of his uniform as he stepped onto the surface of Lyrath-Prime, a planet that gleamed under twin suns like a jewel. The ground beneath him was soft, almost sponge-like, giving each step a curious bounce. Colors shimmered everywhere, trees that swayed with metallic leaves, rivers that reflected more light than water should, and clouds that drifted lazily in hues of violet and pink. It was beautiful, alien, and completely overwhelming. Ethan's mission was simple in theory: establish contact with the Lyrathi, a newly discovered species that had shown remarkable intelligence and sophisticated culture through their distant transmissions. In practice, he felt like a schoolboy who had wandered into a planet-sized amusement park without instructions. "Remember," Lieutenant Mara whispered from behind him, "stay calm, stay polite, and whatever you do, do not make the first mistake. They are highly observant." Ethan nodded, although his attention was already caught by movement ahead. There she was. The Lyrathi ambassador, Sira, emerged from a towering, translucent building that seemed to breathe with light. Her form was elegant, almost humanoid but different in every way. Her skin shimmered softly with a silver tint, her limbs long and graceful, and her movements fluid, almost like a dance. Ethan found himself distracted. It was not intentional, of course. He reminded himself of that. But as Sira turned to greet the delegation, Ethan noticed something about her posture, the way she moved. There was an alien elegance to the shape of her hips, the subtle sway that seemed to communicate something without words. His gaze lingered longer than it should. Sira's head tilted slightly, her eyes catching his. There was a pause, a weightless moment where the world seemed to tilt. She didn't speak, but her expression was unmistakable. Curiosity, amusement, and perhaps a hint of reproach. Ethan's stomach sank. He had no idea how Lyrathi interpreted human body language, but he was almost certain he had committed a breach of etiquette. "Captain Drake," the voice of Ambassador Lyon, the Lyrathi liaison, sounded through his comms. "Welcome. We are pleased you have arrived." Ethan snapped his gaze forward, clearing his throat. "Thank you, Ambassador Lyon. It's an honor to meet you." Sira's eyes followed him with a faint, playful glimmer, and Ethan felt heat rise to his cheeks. Great. First contact, and he was already fumbling. The delegation moved toward the city, walking along smooth walkways that seemed to float above glowing flora. Ethan and his team were guided by Lyrathi aides, beings of varying forms and colors, each moving with the same elegant grace as Sira. Every so often, Ethan's eyes involuntarily drifted toward the same graceful sway that had caught him at first. Every time he did, he felt the weight of Sira's gaze. "Careful," Mara whispered again. "I think she notices." Ethan cursed silently. Not exactly the first impression he wanted to make. He tried to focus on the architecture, the incredible floating buildings and their luminescent walls. But every time he looked, his mind pinged back to Sira's subtle, mesmerizing movements. Finally, they reached a large plaza. Lyrathi structures arched over them, forming a semi-transparent dome that reflected the twin suns in fractal patterns. A gentle wind carried the scent of unknown flowers and the soft hum of the planet's natural energy. Here they would begin the formal introduction, and Ethan felt the tension tighten in his chest. Sira stepped forward, moving with deliberate grace. She extended a hand, or at least what appeared to be a hand, ending in delicate, tapered digits. Ethan mirrored her, shaking carefully. He kept his gaze on her face. "Captain Drake," she said, her voice melodious yet slightly alien in cadence, "we have observed your species from afar. You are different from what we expected." Ethan swallowed. "Different how?" Sira tilted her head again, curious, persistent, and prone to subtle focus on aspects of a being that may not be the intended focus. Ethan's ears burned. He knew she was speaking metaphorically, but it was hard not to feel like she meant him. He cleared his throat. I apologize if I've offended." Sira's lips curved into something resembling a smile. Observation is not offense, but awareness is important. A being's form communicates more than words. Ethan nodded, though he felt foolish. So much for casual diplomacy. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of introductions and ceremonial gestures. Ethan struggled to follow the Lyrathi customs. Simple actions, like bowing or extending a greeting, had subtle variations that could mean respect, insult, or humor. Every time he misstepped, Sira's eyes flickered in ways he couldn't quite interpret, a mixture of amusement and judgment. By midday, the human delegation was seated in a grand hall, walls alive with shifting colors that reflected emotion or thought, a Lyrathi innovation. Sira took her place at the head of the room, and Ethan tried to concentrate on the meeting, taking notes, asking questions about culture, society, and technology. But even as he spoke, he couldn't ignore the lingering tension of earlier moments. During a pause, he glanced again, and realized Sira was watching him with that same playful intensity. His heart thumped. He made a conscious effort to focus on her eyes, on the conversation, but the human brain, he discovered, did not cooperate easily. "You seem fascinated," Sira said suddenly, voice soft but carrying through the hall. Ethan blinked. "I'm fascinated by your culture, your people." He paused, realizing how lame that sounded. "Yes, very fascinating." Her head tilted, and for the first time she laughed, a sound like wind chimes. It was gentle, teasing, and disarming. Fascination is good. It shows attention, but attention has its forms. Observe carefully, but be mindful of what your focus communicates. Ethan nodded, swallowing hard. He had never felt so scrutinized in his life. And yet, there was something exhilarating about it. The idea that humans, with all their awkwardness, could navigate this entirely alien world. After the meeting, Sira invited Ethan to walk with her through the city. Other delegates lingered behind, giving them a private corridor in the floating pathways. Ethan felt a mix of dread and excitement. This was uncharted territory, socially and culturally. As they walked, Sira spoke of her world, her people, the subtle meanings behind gestures, posture, and movement. Ethan listened, trying to absorb everything, and inevitably he glanced again. He couldn't help it. Sira stopped abruptly. "Why do you keep looking at me so?" Ethan froze, heart racing. I mean, words failed him. Sira tilted her head, studying him. There was no anger, only a sharp, intelligent curiosity. Humans are direct in ways we do not understand. You focus on aspects that we use to communicate. Your observation is not rudeness, but interpretation. Interesting. Ethan blinked, relief washing over him. She wasn't angry, she was intrigued. "So, it's okay." Sira laughed again, the sound soft but echoing in the open plaza. "It is enlightening. Your species sees differently. You notice differently. I will not punish curiosity, but learn to observe fully, not partially." He nodded, feeling a little foolish and entirely relieved. "I'll try." They continued walking, Sira explaining the etiquette of their dances, the meanings behind gestures, and how even small actions could convey immense respect or immense offense. Ethan realized that what had seemed awkward moments were lessons in cultural nuance. He was learning, fumbling as he went, but learning nonetheless. By the time the sun began to lower, casting long violet shadows over the city, Ethan felt both exhausted and exhilarated. Sira's eyes followed him, always observing, always calculating. And somewhere deep in him, a realization took root. Humanity had a way of surviving, adapting, and thriving not through perfection, but through curiosity, humor, and courage, even in a world completely unlike their own. "Tomorrow," Sira said softly, "you will participate in a ceremony. It is important for understanding. Pay attention to every motion, every gesture, every nuance, and perhaps this time focus on more than one part at a time." Ethan chuckled nervously. "Yes, I'll do my best." Sira's faint smile lingered as she turned away, leaving Ethan alone on the glowing pathway. The twin suns painted the sky in shades of amber and lavender, and for the first time, he felt that humans had a chance here, not just to survive among the stars, but to be understood, appreciated, and perhaps even admired. And maybe, just maybe, to surprise an alien species that had never encountered a human before. As night fell, Ethan gazed at the alien horizon, realizing that the hardest part wasn't surviving the planet, the technology, or even the strange beings. It was navigating the human heart in a place that demanded both humility and courage. And somehow, he knew that tomorrow would be even more challenging and more extraordinary. The morning sun broke across the glowing horizon of Lyrath-Prime, casting long, shifting shadows over the translucent city. Captain Ethan Drake awoke with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Today was the day of the ceremony that Sira had mentioned, and he could not shake the memory of her sharp, playful gaze from the previous evening. He had spent hours reviewing his notes on Lyrathi customs, gestures, and social signals, but even so, he felt ill-prepared. The human delegation gathered in the main hall, a grand structure that floated above a field of softly luminescent plants. The walls pulsed gently with color, reflecting the mood of those inside. Ethan felt the strange hum of the building beneath his feet and wondered if the Lyrathi had some sort of energy network integrated into their architecture. Regardless, the real challenge lay ahead. Sira appeared, stepping gracefully into the hall, and Ethan's stomach tightened. She moved with an elegance that made every human movement feel clumsy by comparison. Her eyes flicked toward him, and for a brief moment, Ethan felt as if she could see not just what he did but what he was thinking. "Captain Drake," she said, her voice calm, melodic, and slightly teasing, "you are prepared for the ceremony." Ethan straightened, attempting confidence. "Yes, Ambassador Sira, I believe I understand what is required." Sira raised a delicate eyebrow. "Understanding and doing are two different things. We shall see." The ceremony took place in a vast circular arena open to the sky. Ethereal ribbons of light floated above the participants, twisting and shifting as if alive. Lyrathi citizens had gathered, their forms varied, some tall and slender, others more rounded, all moving with a natural grace. Ethan could feel the eyes of hundreds upon him, assessing, observing, and perhaps judging. Sira led him to the center of the arena, where human delegates were instructed to stand in a line. She gestured with one arm, and holographic images appeared, depicting gestures, stances, and postures that conveyed respect, humor, and attentiveness. Ethan tried to memorize them quickly, aware that even a small mistake could be interpreted incorrectly. The first task was simple in concept: mimic a series of Lyrathi postures to convey respect to the audience. The human delegation shuffled nervously. Ethan watched carefully as Sira demonstrated. Her movements were fluid, sweeping, yet precise. "Focus not on imitation alone," she advised, "but on intention. Humans often succeed when their heart is genuine, not when their form is perfect." Ethan swallowed hard, feeling both pressure and encouragement. He took a deep breath and began. His first attempt was stiff, awkward, his hands too tense. He noticed Sira's gaze on him, studying, patient but hinting at amusement. He adjusted, softening his shoulders, allowing his movements to become more natural. Slowly he began to feel a rhythm, a flow that, while imperfect, conveyed sincerity. When he completed the sequence, Sira nodded. "Better, but still aware of focus. Do not allow curiosity to distract you from full attention." Ethan's ears burned. He knew exactly what she meant, and yet it was difficult not to glance at her. Somehow, Sira's presence made him forget everything else. The next task was more challenging. Each participant had to observe another being and interpret their gestures, then respond appropriately. Ethan was paired with a Lyrathi named Chiron, whose form shimmered with soft blue patterns. Chiron shifted subtly, a sway of the torso that Ethan was told conveyed amusement, followed by a tilt of the head that suggested inquiry. Ethan focused intently, recalling Sira's advice. He mirrored Chiron's gestures with care, adding slight modifications to show attentiveness and curiosity. Chiron responded with a small wave of light from the patterns on their skin, a sign of approval. Ethan felt a spark of triumph. He was learning, but Sira's eyes found him again. She stepped closer, speaking softly. Curiosity can be dangerous if it becomes distraction. Observe fully, not partially. Ethan nodded, embarrassed but determined. He would not let simple mistakes define humanity in this alien world. The final task involved a dance-like ritual, meant to symbolize mutual understanding. Humans were paired with Lyrathi partners, moving in a sequence that conveyed respect, trust, and harmony. Ethan's partner was Sira herself. His heart raced as he took his position beside her, acutely aware that hundreds of Lyrathi were watching. Sira's movements were effortless, flowing like water. Ethan tried to match them, stepping carefully, adjusting his posture and watching for cues. At first he stumbled slightly, placing a hand too high or a foot slightly off rhythm. Sira's soft laugh, musical and light, encouraged him. "You are improving," she said. "Your species is persistent." Ethan smiled, feeling a surge of confidence. He began to anticipate her movements, responding naturally, allowing his body to follow the rhythm. Slowly, he and Sira moved in harmony. The audience murmured softly, their attention riveted. Ethan realized that the true challenge was not perfection. It was connection, awareness, and sincerity. As the ritual progressed, Ethan felt a strange exhilaration. He was dancing on an alien world, following rules he barely understood, yet somehow connecting with a being entirely unlike himself. And in doing so, he felt humanity shine, not through strength, weapons, or technology, but through intuition, courage, and heart. When the ritual ended, Sira regarded him with a faint, approving smile. "You have learned well today. Not all of your species would have succeeded." Ethan's chest swelled with pride. "Thank you. I am honored." Sira's gaze lingered, a mixture of amusement and curiosity. "Your fascination with certain aspects of our form, it is understandable. But now I see that you can balance curiosity with respect. That is important." Ethan chuckled nervously. I'll do my best to keep it in check." The remainder of the day was spent in informal interactions, where humans and Lyrathi explored shared interests. Ethan marveled at the technology, the art, and the social structures, all of which were advanced yet deeply intertwined with culture and meaning. He realized that intelligence was not only about invention but about understanding. Sira occasionally appeared beside him, offering subtle guidance, correcting gestures, and testing his attentiveness with small challenges. Ethan found himself learning quickly, relying not on rote memorization, but on empathy, observation, and intuition, qualities humans often underestimated in themselves. As the twin suns set, casting a golden lavender hue over the city, Ethan and Sira found a quiet terrace overlooking a field of glowing plants. The air shimmered with soft light, and the sounds of the city were muted, replaced by a gentle hum that seemed alive. "You have done well today," Sira said softly. "You understand more than many of your kind. That is remarkable." Ethan felt a warm sense of accomplishment. "Thank you. I think I'm beginning to understand your world at least a little." Sira tilted her head. "Understanding is only the first step. Appreciation comes next. And appreciation requires observation, patience, and honesty." Ethan nodded, reflecting on the day. He had made mistakes, stumbled over gestures, and felt awkward countless times, yet he had persisted. He had observed, learned, and adapted, and in doing so he had earned a small measure of respect in a world that was entirely alien. "Tomorrow," Sira continued, "you will face a new challenge. It is not physical, nor is it intellectual alone. It will test your awareness, your humanity, and your capacity to adapt." Ethan felt a thrill of anticipation. Challenges were not new to humans, but this was unlike anything he had faced before. And somehow he trusted that with guidance, determination, and a willingness to learn, he could rise to meet it. As night fell and the stars appeared in patterns unlike any he had seen, Ethan gazed at the horizon. He realized that humanity's greatest strength was not strength or technology alone. It was the ability to adapt, connect, and learn in ways that others might not expect. He had stumbled, he had worried, he had fumbled. And yet he had also succeeded in small ways that mattered immensely. Somewhere in the distance, Sierra's silhouette moved against the glowing cityscape, elegant and unyielding. Ethan smiled to himself. Humanity had taken its first real steps on Lyrath Prime, and he could feel that the journey was only beginning. The planet was strange, beautiful, and challenging, but humanity, he realized, had something special that could not be ignored. Curiosity, humor, courage, and the unyielding desire to understand. And tomorrow, whatever awaited him in the next challenge, he would face it with everything he had learned so far, because humans were remarkable. Not because they were perfect, but because they were endlessly persistent, endlessly curious, and endlessly willing to rise to the occasion. And somewhere just beyond sight, Sierra was watching, smiling quietly at the human who was learning to see the world, not just through his eyes, but through the heart of humanity itself. The morning on Lyrath Prime began with a soft, golden light spilling across the translucent city. Captain Ethan Drake rose early, his mind buzzing with anticipation. Today was the final challenge, the moment that would define humanity's place among the Lyrathi. The events of the past 2 days had tested him, taught him, and in small ways humbled him. But now he felt ready. The ceremony was to take place in the Hall of Reflection, a vast dome whose walls shimmered with living light. As humans entered, they were greeted by the subtle hum of energy flowing through the structure, resonating with thought and emotion. Hundreds of Lyrathi had gathered, their forms diverse, their eyes bright with curiosity. Ethan could feel their attention like a gentle pressure, a reminder that every movement, every expression mattered. Sierra stood at the center of the hall, her posture perfect, her eyes observing. As Ethan approached, he noticed the faint shimmer along her limbs, the way the light reflected differently with each subtle shift in her position. She was a living display of grace, intelligence, and precision. "You are ready," she said softly, though her voice carried through the dome. "The final challenge is not a test of strength, nor of memory. It is a test of perception, empathy, and understanding. You will be presented with a series of situations. How you respond will reveal your species' true nature." Ethan nodded, feeling a mixture of nervousness and excitement. He had learned much already, but the final challenge would require him to apply everything at once. The first scenario appeared as a holographic projection in the center of the hall. It depicted a small Lyrathi child, lost in a crowded area, looking frightened and unsure. Ethan's first instinct was to approach, to comfort and guide. But Sierra's eyes reminded him to observe first. He noticed subtle cues in the child's posture, the way its shoulders tensed, the slight quiver in the shimmer of its skin, the way it glanced at the crowd. These were signals that indicated not just fear, but a desire for assistance and reassurance. Ethan knelt slightly, keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. He spoke softly, in the universal translation provided by the Lyrathi, explaining that he was there to help. The child's movements relaxed and it followed him willingly. Sierra's eyes flickered, a faint glimmer of approval. "Good," she said. "You perceive not only the obvious but the subtle. Awareness of emotion is the first step." The second scenario was more complex. A group of Lyrathi adults were engaged in a discussion, one that seemed tense. The holographic projection showed gestures and movements that Ethan had never encountered. Some forms flickered with rapid pulses, others shifted rhythmically. Sierra had explained that these signals conveyed layers of meaning, Agreement, doubt, humor, or subtle critique. Ethan focused intently. He observed the patterns, noting how one gesture softened another, how timing indicated sincerity, and how light patterns revealed hidden emotional currents. When prompted, he mirrored appropriate gestures, showing attentiveness and understanding without interrupting or overstepping. The Lyrathi adults in the projection responded positively, nodding and adjusting their gestures to match his, signaling acceptance. Sira's expression was unreadable at first, then softened. You interpret complex signals without misunderstanding. You understand that observation alone is not enough. You must integrate understanding with action. Ethan exhaled, relief washing over him. Each success built his confidence, yet he knew the final scenario would be the most difficult. The last projection emerged, more vivid than the others. It was a social puzzle, a series of interconnected interactions between humans and Lyrathi. Some gestures suggested curiosity, others playfulness, and some mischief. The challenge was to navigate the situation successfully, maintaining harmony, understanding, and respect. Ethan felt the familiar tension rise in his chest. He scanned the projections carefully. At first, it was chaotic. Gestures overlapped, signals contradicted each other, and the meaning of some movements was subtle enough to confuse even the most attentive observer. He took a deep breath and remembered Sira's advice. Observe fully, not partially. He focused on the intent behind each gesture, noticing the rhythm, the timing, and the emotional undertones. He responded deliberately, matching curiosity with respect, humor with humility, and attentiveness with patience. Slowly, the chaotic scene began to resolve. Interactions aligned, misunderstandings smoothed, and harmony was restored. Ethan realized that the key was not perfection, but genuine connection and adaptation. Sira's voice resonated through the hall. You have succeeded. Not because you mimic perfectly, but because you perceive, learn, and respond with honesty. Your species possesses qualities that are rare and valuable. Ethan felt a surge of pride, mixed with humility. He had learned, stumbled, adapted, and ultimately succeeded. He had faced challenges that were foreign in every way, yet he had relied on the very human traits that made him who he was: curiosity, empathy, humor, and resilience. The audience erupted into soft murmurs of approval. The Lyrathi shimmered and shifted, their patterns of light indicating appreciation and respect. Ethan realized that humanity had been accepted not because it was strong or technologically advanced, but because it had shown understanding, adaptability, and heart. Sira approached him, her expression serene. Captain Drake, you have demonstrated the essence of your species. You are curious, persistent, and capable of empathy beyond what we expected. This is a rare combination. Ethan smiled, humbled and grateful. Thank you, Ambassador Sira. I have learned much from you, and I hope to continue learning. Sira's eyes twinkled. And you shall, for understanding is not a single moment, it is an ongoing journey. The human delegation gathered around, congratulating Ethan quietly. He realized that each of them had observed his actions, learned from his successes and mistakes, and would carry these lessons forward. Humanity's place among the Lyrathi was no longer uncertain. Through careful observation, genuine curiosity, and heartfelt engagement, they had earned respect. As the ceremony concluded, Sira invited Ethan to walk with her through the city once more. The evening air shimmered with light, the plants glowing softly beneath their feet. You have adapted well, she said. Your species surprises us. Curiosity and courage are admirable, but your willingness to learn and respect difference is extraordinary. Ethan nodded, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. It's not always easy, he admitted. But I believe that humans have a way of rising to challenges, even when they don't fully understand them at first. Sira smiled, a rare and warm gesture. Indeed, you are persistent, clever, and attentive. These traits will serve your species well in the universe. They paused on a terrace overlooking the city, the twin suns setting in brilliant hues of orange and violet. Ethan reflected on the journey so far, the awkward missteps, the misunderstandings, the small triumphs, and the moments of laughter. Each had been a lesson in its own way, teaching him that humanity's greatest strength was its capacity to observe, adapt, and connect. "Tomorrow," Sira said softly, "you will continue your interactions with the Lyrathi. But today, you have proven that your species is capable of more than we anticipated. Curiosity, empathy, and courage will carry you further than you know." Ethan felt a quiet thrill. The challenges would continue, the lessons would deepen, but he now understood something fundamental. Humanity did not need to be perfect to be remarkable. Its value lay in its willingness to face the unknown, to learn, and to persist. The stars appeared one by one, shimmering above the city in unfamiliar constellations. Ethan gazed at them, realizing that the universe was vast, mysterious, and filled with possibilities. Humans were small in comparison, yet they had the capacity to surprise, to connect, and to rise to any challenge. As he turned to leave, Sira's eyes met his once more. There was no reproach, no judgment, only recognition. Ethan understood that this was not the end of the journey, but the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter where humans and Lyrathi would learn from one another, explore together, and perhaps even thrive together. He smiled quietly to himself. Humanity had stumbled, adapted, and succeeded. It had navigated alien customs, complex social signals, and unfamiliar challenges. And in doing so, it had demonstrated qualities that were uniquely, profoundly human. For the first time, Ethan truly understood the essence of the Lyrathi lesson. Observation, empathy, courage, and adaptability were more powerful than any weapon, more valuable than any technology. They were the qualities that defined humans, and they were qualities that would allow humanity to thrive among the stars. As the night deepened and the city glowed beneath them, Ethan felt a sense of quiet pride. Humanity had taken its first real steps on Lyrath Prime, and it had done so not through strength or force, but through heart, curiosity, and persistence. And somewhere nearby, Sira watched, her gaze warm and approving, knowing that the humans had proven themselves worthy not just of understanding, but of respect. Ethan took a deep breath, letting the glow of the city and the light of the stars fill him with a quiet confidence. The universe was vast, unpredictable, and full of wonder, and humanity, awkward, curious, persistent humanity, was ready to meet it, one step at a time. Because in the end, it was not power or perfection that defined a species. It was the courage to learn, the willingness to understand, and the heart to connect. And humanity, he knew, had all three. As the night closed in and the twin moons rose above the glowing horizon, Ethan realized that this was only the beginning. A beginning filled with challenges, discoveries, and connections that would shape the future. And with Sira and the Lyrathi as allies, guides, and friends, the possibilities were limitless. Humanity had proven itself. And in doing so, it had begun to write a story among the stars. A story defined not by domination, but by understanding, empathy, and the remarkable, unyielding spirit that made them human.